All right, today we're talking about a mineral you've probably heard of, but you might not realize just how big a role it plays in your body. We're pulling back the curtain on an unsung hero, chromium.
Have you ever stopped to think about what actually happens to the food you eat? I mean, what's the secret sauce that turns that meal into fuel for your day instead of just, storing it as fat? It's a question we all ask, and the answer might be simpler than you think.
Every single day, our bodies are working on this incredibly complex puzzle. They're trying to figure out how to manage all the energy and sugar from the food we eat. It's a constant balancing act, right? Turning everything into fuel. So what's the key to making this whole system run smoothly? Well, it turns out a key piece of that puzzle is a tiny, often overlooked hero, and it's time we properly introduce it. We're talking about chromium. So what exactly is it? Chromium is what we call an essential trace mineral. Now, that's just a fancy way of saying our bodies absolutely need it to work right, but only in really, really small amounts. And its main job? Oh, it's a huge one. Helping to regulate our blood sugar and that super important hormone, insulin.
And this is where things get super interesting, because for such a tiny player, it has some pretty serious superpowers. Let's break them down.
Its number one job, its biggest and most important power, is that it directly supports your metabolism. I mean, think about it. That's the engine room of your body. It's the core process that decides how you use the energy you get from food.
And the way it works is actually pretty elegant. It's a simple three-step process. First, you eat. Then, chromium comes in and basically helps insulin do its job way more effectively. And the end result, more of that food gets turned into energy your body can use instead of getting stored away as fat. It's like a tiny efficiency manager for your cells.
Okay, superpower number 2 is all about improving insulin sensitivity. If you think of insulin as the key that unlocks your cells to let sugar in for energy, well, chromium is like the master locksmith that makes sure that key fits the lock perfectly every single time. It helps your cells become more responsive, so the whole system just works smarter, not harder. And get this, there's a third potential superpower that's really cool. Some studies are suggesting that because chromium is so good at helping to stabilize blood sugar levels, it might also help quiet down those intense cravings for sugary foods. By helping you avoid those big sugar spikes and crashes, it might just calm down that little voice in your head that's screaming for a cookie. So if this mineral is such a big deal, where do we find it? Where does this little hero hide out? Well, the good news is you don't have to go on some epic quest to find it. Believe it or not, it's probably already in your kitchen right now. Chromium is found in a ton of different whole foods we eat every day. We're talking vegetables, whole grains, meats, seafood, even nuts and fruits. Yeah, I mean, just look at this. We're talking about everyday stuff. Broccoli, potatoes, beef, chicken, shrimp, oats, almonds. The big takeaway here is super simple. If you eat a balanced, varied diet, you're probably already getting plenty of this mineral.
But, with any hero, or really with any nutrient, there's always a need for balance. And that brings us to a really important point, the golden rule of moderation.
And this is really important to understand. On one hand, actually being deficient in chromium is incredibly rare. It's usually only a concern for people whose diets are super high in processed foods and refined sugars. But on the other side of the coin, getting too much is a real risk. And this almost exclusively happens from going overboard with supplements, which can potentially cause problems for your liver or kidneys. And that brings us to maybe the single most important point of this whole explainer. Natural foods are always your best and safest bet. Your first stop for chromium should always be your plate, not the supplement aisle, unless, of course, a doctor specifically tells you otherwise.
At the end of the day, it all just comes back to one thing: balance. A varied, whole food diet gives your body exactly what it needs, without you having to worry about the risks.
So now that you're in on the secret of this metabolic hero, I'll leave you with one final thought. The next time you sit down for a meal, take a look at your plate. What does it tell you about chromium? Thanks for tuning in.